In these speakers, I've never heard these songs portrayed in such a way. I thought it was really, really beautiful.
Exceptional is the word I would use.
I didn't like them. They're also a nightmare for anybody that's OCD afflicted. Hi everyone, Adrian from Audio Excellence. Hope you're doing well. So we have a treat for you today. Actually, it's been a treat for us, sort of. We're going to be reviewing the Martin Logan ESL 15A Renaissance. Now, I had originally done an unboxing, but we decided instead of torturing you, those of you that actually watch our unboxing videos, it's an inside joke. If you don't get it, it's okay. I decided, okay, well, this time around, we'll try to be a bit more professional because we get a lot, and I get a lot of direct emails saying, guys, stop doing unboxing videos. And I keep thinking, yeah, but a lot of people watch it. This time we'll spare you the unboxing video, and we'll actually insert parts of it instead into this particular video. So the ESL 15A is the second from the top of the line speaker in their hybrid design. The top of the line is the Neolith. We had previously done the 11A, which is their two models down, I guess. And one of the guys will leave a link so you can watch the video if you like. It's their hybrid design. So the electrostatic panel covers the mid-range and upper frequencies. And then in this case, they use two 12-inch woofers in a sealed cabinet. Each woofer has its own sealed compartment, and each woofer has a 500-watt dedicated amplifier. And then on top of that, it comes with the ARC, the Anthem room correction, because Anthem, the company Paradigm actually owns Martin Logan and Anthem. And so they're using the same room correction system, except in this case, the room correction system is just for the bass. That's good because it means that the electrostatic panel has no correction whatsoever. In addition to that, on the back of the cabinet, you will see controls for low frequencies, low bass from I think 75 hertz on down, plus or minus 12 dB. That's insane. That's a huge range. But it also means that you can really dial in or increase the bass or decrease the bass as you like. There's also around about 200 hertz, if I'm not incorrect. There's a 3-position switch, minus 2 dB, 0, and 2 dB. Aren't you impressed that this old man actually remembers all this stuff?
He's reading.
I'm not reading. What am I reading? I'm impressing myself. That's crazy. So anyway, the ESL 15A sells for 37,500 Canadian or 27,000 US dollars. Yeah, 37.5 Canadian, 27 or 27.5 US. And we got it in about 2 weeks ago. They come in these huge boxes, like really big boxes, very deep. This is crazy. So this is double of me. It's insane. But it's really, really well packed. That's one thing I like about it. So one thing to be aware, if you decide to buy these speakers, make sure that you have the logistical space to maneuver the boxes. Once the speakers are out of the box, it's not a big deal, but the boxes themselves are very, very big. And
you could fit the crate of an XVX inside.
Yeah,
these boxes.
They're big.
Yeah.
I mean, the nice thing is that once you're done, they can collapse, so they become very thin, so you can slide them somewhere. But fully formed, they're big. Okay, let's see if there's anything else I need to tell you. No, I think that's it. In the unboxing part of it, we went into some details and so on, which again, the guys might include. But being the shit disturber that I am, I was wondering, why do they call the speaker the Renaissance? The Renaissance ESL 15A. Are they trying to imply something? So I thought, you know what, rather than me speaking English as a second language, let me look it up and see what Renaissance means. So Justin, this is for you. The revival of art and literature under the influence of classical models in the 14th to 16th centuries. Now, I'm not that old, right? I wasn't born in the 14th to 16th centuries. don't recall, I'm almost sure, willing to bet, they didn't have speakers back then. So I don't know what the heck it is that they're reviving. Okay. The culture and style of art and architecture developed during the Renaissance. I don't know. Mike, you're much more of an artistic kind of guy. Does this look like the kind of art that people like Da Vinci and his peers were developing back in the 14th, 16th century?
I would say that this would not look out of place inside the Sistine Chapel.
Oh.
Just saying.
Oh.
Fascinating.
All right, who wants to start?
Louis does.
Oh, okay.
Louisa.
You want me to?
Louisa.
I can go
Okay. Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Oh, Mike.
Okay.
Michael.
I absolutely adore them. When we had taken them out of the box, when we were just burning them in, we had them face to face. One speaker was out of phase. And even then, you could tell that there was something special about them. Okay? You could tell that there was, even though they're face to face, the worst possible listening positions, one speaker's out of phase, you could tell that there was something special going on with these speakers. And sure enough, when we came in one morning, and Adrian likes to come in the middle of the night like little elves and set everything up. They were already set up when we got here, and I was just floored how beautiful they do sound.
You're not saying buttery?
So, not yet. So, I listened to, we had about 2 weeks of listening to these guys. So I listened to a lot of tracks. I'm just going to name 4 just off the top of my head that I wrote down here. The first one was Charlie Mingus. Mingus Dynasty is the album. And I've always gotten this title wrong. I always thought it was Farewell, but it's Farwell's Mill Valley. Charlie Mingus was a composer. He headed up a big band, and usually big bands are pretty, like they're following the charts. They don't really do any improv. And Charlie Mingus, he stopped all that. He said, we can do a big band, but you still have the ability to improvise. These recordings are very hot. There's obviously a very big horn section. So on a lot of systems, these tracks can be quite fatiguing. And these speakers handled it beautifully. They were so transparent. There were things, I've been listening to this track since I was a child, and there are things that I had never heard before. Little trails of the horn section. There's a coherence with the bass section. Now I'm not entirely sure, because I know the panels themselves can go down quite low. So I don't know if the subwoofers are there just to fill it in a little bit, but it's beautiful. You can't hear anything. So there were parts in his bass. Obviously, Charlie Mingus is a bass player. In his bass that I had never heard before that were coming through beautifully. So there's a transparency in these speakers. I've never heard these songs portrayed in such a way. I thought was really, really beautiful. The second track I'm going to speak about is by a band called Yes. And the track is Heart of the Sunrise. Yes is a prog rock band. This song has a very tight rhythm section. Bill Bruford is the drummer. His drums were never bombastic. His bass drum never really shook the room. But it's a very tight sounding drum kit. The bassist, Chris Squire, played a Rickenbacker. So Rickenbackers are known for being very trebly sometimes. The bass part of the spectrum can be a little bit gritty, and he went even a step further. He actually bi-amped his bass, so the treble part actually went through a little bit of distortion. And that rhythm section was so tight on these speakers. so tight. The drums were so tight. When the bass and the drums get locked in,
Tell me again how tight they were.
beautiful. I love it. I love it. It literally, like, again, I've been listening to these songs since before I was in kindergarten. So I'm very, very familiar with these
You're
songs.
not that young.
I know. I've been listening to this song for a very, very
Yes,
long time.
yes, became popular right around about 80s, no?
Well, they had hits in the 80s. They had, in the 80s, it was like The Owner of a Lonely Heart. They went through many iterations.
Yeah, that was a big song.
But this song would have been from 1971 or 72.
You know they've been around that long?
Oh, yeah. They started off in the 60s. So, again, the rhythm section, there was a transparency in things I've never heard before in this track that astounded me and made me go, and sometimes you forget that you're here to review speakers and you're just listening to the music. So I forgot, and I'm just listening to the music for things I've never heard before in these tracks. Let's see here. The next one is Oscar Peterson live at the Stratford Festival here in Ontario. This is the Oscar Peterson trio. He had a few different iterations of the trio. This one is with Herb Ellis on guitar and Ray Brown on bass. So there's no percussion, there's no drums in this tune. Herb Ellis and Ray Brown used to practice independently, and they had a goal. These three had a goal. The goal was at certain times in certain tracks that when they were playing, they wanted all the notes to kind of mold together so that you couldn't actually hear what was the bass note, what was the guitar, and what was the piano. And Herb Ellis and Ray Brown would actually practice independently because Oscar Peterson's a heavyweight of musicians and piano, so they needed to practice to match his ability. So again, their goal was that at certain times they wanted the music to just mold together so that you really couldn't hear what instrument was playing what notes, and that you would just get the impression of notes, but not necessarily here's the guitar and here's the bass. But on these speakers, you could actually start to pick out, that is the bass and that is the guitar and that is the piano note. So there are certain times where this track can be a little bit have a little bit too much sibilance, but not on these speakers. It handled it perfectly. Again, the transparency was gorgeous. The last track, this is my favorite band. It's The Who, and the song is Who Are You? If you see me listening to this song, I am almost certainly air drumming because I am the world's best air drummer, as everybody knows. Once again, been listening to this track since I was a child. Usually there's nothing that can make me go wow, but once again, Keith Moon's drumming really shines in this track. He was getting a little bit old by this time. He was drinking heavily, so his drumming was not that great. Pete Townsend, the band leader and the guitarist, had many times throughout these sessions had threatened to fire him because his drumming was getting sloppy. But on this track, man, these speakers were just pumping. The bass, which can be a little bit muddy on other speakers, you can hear a lot of the grittiness in the bass. So again, a lot of these tracks, it's like I'm listening to it for the first time again. Like I'm getting so excited listening to these tracks. Yeah.
Good. All right.
Awesome.
Your turn.
I won't outdo you, Mike, but my first impression was without the ARC, the room correction, and then with the room correction. I'll give you that final thought when we're summing up. I think there's a difference, so I don't want to start off with that with the differences. Okay, so just about 3 weeks ago, I was running through some tracks at home, and I came upon this James Taylor. I'm a big fan of James Taylor, but I had never heard him play this song, Gaia. It's a beautiful song. Words, lyrics are fantastic. And it's well recorded. The acoustic guitar in that track is just amazing with the ESL here, the 15As. Fantastic. Bass and violin comes out, especially at 420 on the timing of this track, which is, I think it's over 5 minutes. So, I'm running through this thing fine, and then all of a sudden this bass note comes out, and it just, after that bass note, it disappears, but on the track, but the reproduction of it on the ESL was just great. My note says here that I said it was mesmerizing. So very, very, the bass, and it's very articulate, like it. The other song I chose, one of the other songs, or rather I chose, which I listened to, was Buzz Cags. Everybody plays it, thanks to you. It's a well-recorded track. His soulful voice. He is strangely a white guy what sings only soul music. So maybe that's why I like him. I don't know. Soul music, Jamaican, I don't know. Again, the instrumentation, the bass in the track, it brings out a lot of how good this track is. And Martin Logan was very willing, not a problem at all. Also, there are some parts of some songs, if you listen in another system, it can get hot on the top. With the Martin Logans, I don't find that to be an issue at all. So, especially when I listen to this one on the Junior, the 11A, I don't find that to be a problem at all. The last song I'm going to talk about here is Sade, Kiss of Life. What I like about her is that whether you listen to her live performances or you listen to her recorded tracks, studio tracks, they sound almost the same because her band used is same in the studio as well as same as live. In this track too, there's a pronunciation of the saxophone, which comes out, and it just embodies that, something is going on. It holds you. And, the Martin Logan is there to help you along. I mean, to me, I find it, really, really good. Exceptional is the word I would use to describe the speaker, but yeah.
Okay.
You're right about the horns too. It handles horns very well.
Oh no, that's very well. Yeah. I mean, it's like loving. I could just hug it.
So, I was trying to figure out what to say about these speakers. I've been a big fan of Martin Logan's for a very, very long time. The earliest speakers I heard were the CLS, and that was back in the mid to late 80s. Subsequently, the monoliths, which were I think their first hybrid speaker. So the early generations of hybrids weren't great. The blend of the woofer and the electrostatic panel wasn't great, but at least it gave you some bass, whereas the panels by themselves just don't. The latter hybrids were much more successful, and then the current ones, again, takes it even further. But as I was listening, I was thinking, okay, we've got all these great speakers already, so there's a lot of competition. And these aren't cheap. At $37.5 Canadian, it's nothing to sneeze at. A lot of people don't make much more than $37.5 a year, and we forget. So every so often I have to remind myself, given the price, how good is it? Well, I didn't like them. I love them.
I was going, what is he saying?
It's quite convincing. Man.
Wow.
I love them. And that's saying a lot because we got a lot of really good speakers. And not only the fact that we have a lot of good speakers, we have clients with great speakers too. Just because we don't carry it doesn't mean that it's no good. It's just simply that sometimes we already have a full slate, we can't carry more. Or business-wise, it doesn't make sense for us to do something. But we all get to experience some incredible speakers. And these are among the finest ones out there. But let me start with some negatives. You guys have been very light on negatives. Let me go on to some negatives so that all of you watching will at least be aware of some concerns. I'm going to check my notes because I can't recall all these. First of all, they're big. They're not tiny speakers you can stick in the corner and ignore. They're 70 inches tall. That's 177.3 centimeters for the rest of the actual educated world, except for us in North America. 29 inches deep, or 63.3 centimeters, and 15.75 inches wide, or 40 centimeters wide. So visually, they're quite imposing. The good thing, however, is that the electrostatic panel is basically transparent, so they don't impede your sense of visual.
They don't seem that big.
No, because again, they're not like one solid monolith, so you can see through it. It doesn't look that bad. But because of their depth, they will take up some space. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, ideally, you shouldn't try to shoehorn these into a small room. In our part of the world, the typical builders, because of our building code, the width of the room is typically about 12 feet wide. I was going to say 12 inches. That's a very, very small room. Typically about 12 feet wide because of the code, the amount of space between the joists and the supports. So you can basically have 12 feet. If you want more, then you have to have support beams. So most rooms up in our area are typically about 12 feet wide and then typically about 18 to 20 feet deep. That's about as small a room I would put these speakers in. You can certainly put them to a much bigger room, but I wouldn't go much smaller than that. I would definitely acoustically treat the wall behind the speakers. So in other words, if the speakers are facing you, that wall is a wall that I would treat, because with the electrostatic panel, they produce the sound forward and backwards. And so the rear wave will bounce off that wall. If you don't have any kind of treatment, it might sound a little bit too lively, and in some cases very echoey in your room. So definitely you might want to think about putting some bookcases or diffraction panels or acoustic panels, absorption panels. And as I mentioned earlier, not cheap, $37.5 Canadian, $27.5 US. This will sound weird that it is a potential negative. It's actually a positive, but it can potentially be a negative. It's highly transparent, as the boys have talked about earlier. Very transparent. Mike went into great lengths about how he heard stuff he'd never heard before on recordings he knows like the back of his hand. Yeah. Because they're so transparent, however, they will tell you what's wrong with your system if you're not careful. So if you've had a system that you're very happy with for years and years and years, and suddenly you introduce these speakers and you start hearing weird things that you're not happy with, there's a good likelihood that it may be your system. You're hearing things about, for example, the electronics that you don't like, that previous speakers that were much more opaque didn't show you. So, for example, as part of my test one morning, I came in and I hooked up some Class D amplifiers that we sell, and they're good Class D amps. But with these speakers, didn't sound that great. So just be aware of that. They're also a nightmare for anybody that's OCD afflicted. And I don't mean that as a joke. If you're the kind of person that is constantly trying to optimize things, you're never happy, you're only happy when you're tweaking and so on the one hand, these speakers might actually be wonderful because you will endlessly be tweaking because they're so transparent and you're constantly playing with it to try and get more. They don't have to be like that, but if you're afflicted that way, it could be a nightmare for some of you. So that's something to be aware of. And yeah, I was going to say, you're going to regret buying these speakers if your equipment is not up to speed. And I don't mean about expense. You don't have to spend a lot of money on electronics. They just have to be very good quality. Otherwise, as I say, you're going to regret buying these speakers. Bright transistor amplifiers, you're going to really hate the system because the speakers are just going to show you what's there. If you love your system to be nice and warm and mellow and sweet and forgiving, yeah, Mike's shaking his head, you're going to hate these speakers because they're not like that. They're quite neutral. They're very transparent. They just show you what's in front of them. This one was not surprising to me. The treble is not as airy and spacious and delicate as some other tweeters that are out there. All the details there. And it's odd that you're thinking, how's that possible? But for example, when I play an orchestra with a triangle, right? That triangle is heard, but it doesn't sort of bloom and lift as some of the tweeters. Now, some of the tweeters will give you tremendous airiness, but could be bright. These don't sound bright. It's just that it doesn't have that. So, for example, if you listen to the Magnepan 3.7s, which we have a pair, when you listen to the high frequencies, they've got this effortless airiness. It just sort of floats. So it's just something to be aware of. If you are used to a really nice, separated soundstage, when you're standing and walking around. So let's say you are doing your chores and, wiping and things like this, and you're not sitting in the sweet spot. And you are used to speakers with very wide dispersion, and a lot of speakers today have that. And you can still hear the right speaker from the left. In other words, if you're left part of the room, and a lot of speakers will let you hear the right speakers quite clearly. You can hear some separation and so on. With these speakers, the moment you stand up, a lot of that magic will change. It's not that magical quality that you get when you're sitting down. So if you expect that and you do a lot of your listening that way, you may not like these speakers very much. I said here, they might score a 4 or 5 out of a 10 if you like to do most of your listening walking around. In other words, casual. So just be aware of that. But then, as I said, they'll give you an 8 out of 10, in some cases 9 out of 10 when you sit down. That magic can be very seductive. So, however, can play almost any genre of music I can think of. In fact, I can't think of any genre of music that they can't play. From the craziest reggae, deep, powerful, rolling bass to the sweetest, softest violin sonata or solo. These do an incredible job. I was truly stunned because I played a very wide variety just to test this hypothesis. No problem at all. They sneer. This is what I said. They sneer at music that destroy most audiophile speakers. Right?
How so?
Huh?
How so?
Remember the other day, I think it was you, we were doing something and suddenly in our suggested playlist, suddenly Rage Against the Machine came up,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So I decided to play that on these speakers, right? And I cranked them up just to see whether anything bad would happen. I figured it's under warranty. Seriously, that's what I thought. I cranked them up and oh my God, I just had so much fun playing this cut. It just no problem whatsoever. The speakers will take it and more. They just make you want to turn it up. And then I thought, for a bit of contrast, I'm going to play Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. And same thing, cranked it all the way up, and all I experienced was just sheer joy. It was like a roller coaster. One moment starting at the very beginning of the opera rock, right? Starts off very simply and so on, and then you get into this big climax, and then at the very end, soft and sweet, and you hear Freddie Mercury tinkling the last few keys of the song, and then it just dies off. And at the end, it feels like you've just gone on this crazy roller coaster ride. And throughout the whole thing, I'm doing this. Remember Wayne's World, right? There's a scene where Garth and Wayne are doing this, and that's what I was doing. It's like, oh my God, this is great. So, like both of them, I got so pulled into the music, and it almost didn't matter what kind of music I was playing. Music communication is a true strength that the speakers have. Again, assuming that the rest of the electronics are good enough. And speaking of that, we're using the D'Agostino monoblocks, the progression monoblocks, with the D'Agostino preamp, the PS Audio Direct Stream DAC Mark II, and it just did a hell of a job. So I was saying that musical communication. The other one of pieces of music that I played was Joni Mitchell. Again, it's one of the pieces of music I love to play if I want to hear if I can get really pulled into the music. So I've talked about this before. In 2000, Joni Mitchell decided to re-record one of her big songs, Both Sides Now. So she wrote this when she was about 23 years old, so many years before. And it's a song about the two sides of love. You fall in love, you're all excited, you're infatuated, that person can't do anything wrong. It's absolutely wonderful. And then something happens. Maybe he cheats on you, maybe you fall out of love with that person, whatever happens, and suddenly there's the other side, and she writes about this when she's 23 years old. And if you listen to her singing it at the age of 23, it sounds like a beautiful pop song. It's like a really nice, catchy tune, and the words are somewhat obscure. They don't tell you what she's trying to say. You have to infer, like a lot of poems. And then in 2000, she re-records this. She's now 57 or so years old, 30-some-odd years of hard drinking, hard smoking, and you listen to her voice, and it's got that roughness. I call it the peanut butter effect, right? The Rod Stewart effect. And she can't hit the same notes as before, so she's brought the song a few notes down.
Oh, she changed keys.
Yes. But the interpretation, oh my God, the gravitas, the way she sings now will give you the immediate sense that she's lived this life. And this song suddenly makes a whole lot more sense than when she first sang it, when she was 23 years old. Well, every time I play this song, on some systems, it doesn't communicate this. On this one, oh my God, goosebumps, scary goosebumps. So I'm just going to cut short. All the audiophile stuff that you guys care about, that we care about, it's all there in spades. Big soundstage, tall, huge imaging, all of that. I mean, bass for days. My gosh, our room has a real problem because the walls are very weak and lossy. The ceiling is fake. Our room, just to give you an idea, it's 18 feet by 22 feet by 20 feet, or 5.5 meters by 6.6 meters by 6 meters. It's a big space. And without any effort, the speakers fill the room, bass is all there. In a normal room where the walls are stronger and you've got the ability to keep the pressure in, as opposed to in this room, the bass will hit you and hurt you if you want. So my conclusion at this point is these may be the most underrated speakers in high end, because hardly anybody ever talks about it. After I did my review, I did a quick search, and there's hardly anything about these speakers.
It's true. There's nothing.
There's
out there.
hardly anything.
Yeah.
So
and they've been out for a number of years now, right?
Oh yeah. So I'm quite shocked at how little people talk about these
I couldn't find any reviews.
Yeah.
I couldn't find any real reviews, to be honest.
It's an awesome speaker.
At a later date, we're going to compare these to the Baby Brothers, the 11s, and then we'll talk a little bit more in details about these. But any final words to sum up?
Did you guys listen to it with the ARC?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is the ARC? I think the ARC is on now.
Whether or not we
my analogy with ARC is like a food.
ARC, again, for those of you who don't know, ARC means anthem room correction, which basically is a process. It's a program inside the subwoofer where you have to buy the microphone. Shame on you, Martin Logan. $37,500 speaker. You don't throw in $150.
It's called a
microphone
PBK kit.
Yeah,
Yes.
shame on you. Anyway, your dealer will loan you a kit. But anyway.
But to me, it's like a food analogy. Is whether you want to have roast chicken versus fried chicken. Give me the fried chicken.
Which one is better?
Oh, fried chicken, for sure, for sure.
Sorry, is that with or without the room correction?
No. The fried chicken is without the room correction. Yeah,
all right.
it's the visceral effect without the smoothness of the bass. Unfortunately, I just like the visceral feeling. I like it when it comes out and hits you hard. In the room, it's not the greatest, but it's still, it gets to you. It's like if you go to a concert and you're listening, it's not refined. Concerts are not refined. I'm not talking inside listening to a classical thing. I'm talking an outdoor concert. It's visceral. I mean, those big speakers,
Yeah.
and it's not, dainty and, a Michelin star restaurant, right? You just want the fried chicken.
Finger licking good.
Finger licking good. You need the fried chicken. But what I find, though, is that the huge soundstage, to me, it's the biggest I've heard. It was bouncing all over the ceiling. I'm going, what the hell is going on
It
here?
felt so much wider than the speakers are placed.
Exactly. We've never, other than how Adrian said that, we have never moved them to anything. And the center's image is still there. Regardless, it's still there. But the soundstage is huge, high, and deep. Could not want better.
What about you?
So every track I listen to, and I listen to a lot more than this, I would listen to it with and without the arc. If I remember correctly, when we reviewed the ESL 15As, I found, at least in that room with the arc on, the bass was a little bit too low, and I found myself raising the gain of the bass. I didn't have to do it this time. I liked it with the arc off. For me, it was readily apparent that a lot of the lower mid-range was being allowed to shine a little bit brighter. So there were certain things in the drums got tighter, the bass, I could hear the grittiness in the bass on everything I listened to. And I'm not just talking about the bass as an instrument, because I listened to Leonard Bernstein's Beethoven's Ninth Symphony Second Movement, which is his best piece of work. I listened to Billie Holiday's its album called Love Songs. So fairly upbeat, but not loud. I listened to lots of Tool. I listened to Nine Inch Nails. I went through the whole gamut, and with the arc on, there was a lot more coming through in the lower mid-range. Like, it was allowing a lot more of those frequencies, the instrumentation of the voices to shine in that area.
I agree there, but to me, I still like the roughage.
Yeah, I do too.
I still like the rough and tough. I like the roughage.
I will say this, going back to the imaging, when you're sitting down, when you're in the sweet spot, there was I wanted for nothing. They were perfect. But then I also have to do work in this room, and I like, when I'm doing work in the room, setting up other systems, what have you, I like to play music. It's one of the benefits of this job. And sure enough, walking around the room, doing what I have to do, and it's not good. So this is not the type of system where if you have multiple people sitting on the couch, one person's going to get the perfect
spot.
sound, and everyone else is kind of going to get... I'm not going to say it's a muddy mess, but it's... you lose the coherence, and things kind of just blend together.
Yeah, ours, unfortunately, for the most part, is a bit of a selfish hobby. Although there are some speakers where the sounds, the listening window is wider, the simple fact is, even with those speakers, the center spot is still the best. In those cases, maybe you can say that the drop-off is not as big as, say, for example, Logan's, the center spot is, let's say, a 9, and then the side spots are maybe a 7 or even a 6. But who bought the speakers? You did.
Yeah.
Why should you be relegated to a 7 or a 6? Your friends come over, they can switch over from time to time. But when they're gone, do you want a 7 or do you want a 9? In my opinion, it's really that simple. The one thing about the ARC, you can switch it in and out. Once you've calibrated the speakers, there's a switch on the back of the speaker. You can switch it on or off, and then you can decide what you prefer. In this particular room, because the walls are very lossy and weak, there are times where not having arc will be better, and sometimes having arc will be better. So you can determine that. In your room, it'll be different. The nice thing is that you have that choice. With a lot of other speakers, you don't have that choice to calibrate, and then if you've got a boomy room and you don't have arc, you cannot do anything about it. With these speakers, if you've got a boomy room, the arc will actually take care of a lot of that boom, so that's a good thing. Anyway, I guess we've gone on long enough. We'll do a part 2 where we'll do a comparison between the baby and this one, and then we'll see what we think. But thank you for watching, as always. Adrian from Audio Excellence, Lewis and Mike, and we'll talk to you again next time. Bye-bye.